Are you prepared to venture into the cryptic world of Hollywood's most enigmatic actors? Buckle up, because tonight, by the flickering glow of your screen, we present a tale that will leave you questioning reality itself. Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of the Blade Shaft Podcast. Tonight, we delve into the enigmatic realm of Nicolas Cage with Vampire Kiss and Renfield. Join us as we enter the blood-curdling secrets, the cryptic connections, and the unholy transformations of none other than Nicolas Cage himself. But beware, this is a journey not for the faint of heart. But if you dare step into the shadows with us, I present to you the tale of Nic Cage Vampire.
Alright, time to do another great episode, hopefully. Alright, I'm gonna grab the movie here. Wait. Mike, shouldn't Vampire's Kiss be filed after John Carpenter's Vampires? It should, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it should. Yep.
Unless, of course, it's somehow been misfiled.
Misfiled?
Yes, misfiled. You know, somebody put the film in the wrong spot. Misfiled. It makes it a lot harder to find.
Ooh. Who? How could someone misfile something? It couldn't be easier. You just put it in the right spot, according to alphabetical order. You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G,
Matt?
H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P,
Matt?
Q, R, S, T, U, V,
Oh.
W, X, Y, Z. That's all you have to do.
Well, yeah. Congrats, you know your alphabet, man.
I never misfiled anything ever. Not once. Not one time. I want to know, really, who did?
I cannot possibly tell you that.
You can?
No, I can't.
And you call yourself a podcaster.
Someone didn't misfile the Blu-ray. Something did. I'm a vampire!
Okay. Here we are in October, finally.
Welcome to the human race.
Welcome to October. It's bloody Shotz. 138. I finally found one that worked.
Nice.
I think it'll last less than a minute.
I win the bet.
Yeah, the bet with yourself.
Yeah.
If I lasted more than a minute, what did you win?
$1.
Shit.
Yeah.
Damn. Every dollar you get, for every minute after you get $1. It's like, woo! Yeah. So.
Are you ready for the annual Halloween spectacular?
Yeah, I'm pumped, man. This is, I think, my favorite time of the year for us to be doing our podcast, even though we do it every week.
It's the best time of year.
Yeah, I agree. This is the first week, Halloween week 1, and a very specific beginning to our October offerings, Nic Cage Vampire Week. Yeah, so 2 films.
2 great tastes that go great together. You got your Nic Cage and my vampire film.
Yeah,
You got your vampire film and my Nic Cage.
It's kind of weird, though, that he did, 2 vampire films in his career, right? I guess he's done so many that...
Yeah. He works.
Yeah, he was bound to... Even though I guess you could say that, one of them is, a true vampire film.
Yeah.
So
did you enjoy watching Nic Cage vampire movies this week?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely. I don't really watch a lot of Nic Cage films outside of the podcast. I mean, I guess I really don't watch too many movies outside of the podcast. But having said that, it was fun to watch. Every time I've seen a movie with him, I've always enjoyed it. So I say keep them coming. For sure, we got plenty to go through. What about you? You're like...
Yeah, it was great. He's my favorite actor, and I've seen Vampire's Kiss a bunch of times, and I thought it was my favorite of all of his movies, and I think watching it again this time confirmed that. It was even better than I remembered.
Yeah.
And I've said it before, but Renfield I was pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting too much, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll get into it here, but
Yeah.
Just the preamble. You better watch behind your back, everybody, because thanks to you, we get to live another week in this scary month. Thanks to your subscriptions. So keep them coming, and we'll hold out hope for one more week.
Yeah.
In the Halloween month of hell! So, we got some polls here. Renfield and Vampire's Kiss. We got like a split here, so...
Interesting.
Most people, like 17% had seen Vampire's Kiss.
Sounds about right.
And a little more had seen Renfield. But I think that's mainly because it's newer, I would assume. But yeah, those are kind of
Interesting.
the pollings there. As usual, I hadn't seen either one of these, but mainly it was when we set out, as usual, we planned these like months ahead of time, and we decided that we wanted to do the films we wanted to do. This year you had come up with some ideas for like films that you had already picked out for what you wanted to do, and I just kind of matched up from that. And this first week, you had picked Vampire's Kiss, and I already wanted to watch Renfield, so I was like, okay, so this is what can go with it.
Perfect opportunity.
Yeah. And I'd wanted to see Renfield ever since I saw like the trailer for it, but I didn't go out to theaters, and then I just kind of just waited. So
Cool.
here we are. So, since I guess you're the Nic Cage aficionado, I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about first.
Let's go in order. Vampire's Kiss.
Nice. So that we can kind of, I guess, say, this was pre-Dracula. Or was it? So, yeah, Vampire's Kiss came out a lot earlier in his career. 1989. Says it's an American black comedy horror film. I would definitely say it's more comedy than anything else. It's very... I know that you were cracking up. I was as well.
Oh, yeah. It's hilarious.
I can always tell when a movie's going to be, like, out of control when, like, we both kind of start talking about it before we do the podcast. Like, or, like, we'll send clips or, like, GIFs or something. This one's also, like, I don't think a lot of people probably know, but this movie has, like, a lot of memes that come from it that I don't think that a lot of people know that that's where this comes from. Maybe if you're a Nic Cage fan, you probably do know, but if you're like me, who I like Nic Cage, but I haven't seen a lot of his films or all of them, then I had no clue where the classic faces of Nic Cage come from.
The big eyes.
Yeah.
And the
one where he's like, yeah.
Am I getting through to you?
Yeah.
Alva!
Yeah, that kind of stuff. But speaking of which, Nic Cage is a star in this with María Conchita Alonso, Jennifer Beals, and Elizabeth Ashley. After an encounter with a neckbiter, a publishing executive thinks he's turning into a vampire. But is he? Guess we'll discuss that.
Yeah.
Starting right now!
So when I first saw this movie, I thought it wasn't what I thought it was going to be at all. Because like based on the poster, I thought it was going to be like a silly comedy, which it definitely is.
Yeah.
But it's also like a little bit more disturbing and kind of scary in some ways.
Yeah.
So I was pretty blown away by it. But I also thought it was hilarious. So.
Yeah.
But also, the first time I ever heard of Nic Cage was when I was a little kid. And my dad either saw this movie or heard about it, and he's like, there's this actor, Nic Cage, and he ate a cockroach for real in a movie. And I was like, whoa! Like, and that anytime we'd see a trailer for a Nic Cage movie, he's like, oh, that's the guy that ate the cockroach.
Nice.
So yeah, that's... And yeah, he certainly does. But
I was going to ask you about that. I guess it was real, so...
It was. He's since said that he regretted doing that just because, I mean, it killed a cockroach for no reason. But he talked about it on the commentary. He's like, I thought of it like a business decision. Like,
Yeah.
this will probably bring a lot more eyeballs to this movie if I do it. So he did it.
And the cockroach was gonna he was losing all of his stocks anyway. So.
And he actually did it 3 times.
To the same cockroach. Third one is what gets you. Yeah, I mean, I guess props for going for that, but yeah, I think it's one of those things. And
because it was an homage to the dude in Dracula,
Renfield.
Yeah,
he eats bugs.
He eats spiders and stuff,
which comes into play when we'll talk about that film
as
well. Yeah, that's it's funny because that's something that we kind of like when we go into this horror territory each month, or even when we watch films that aren't in the Halloween month that are horror related. Whenever we start to like veer into like Italian stuff, that we always run the risk of some pretty heinous shit.
Yeah,
and I'm not talking about like, you know, stuff like people getting their heads cut off or anything, like actual animals being cut up or like, you know, squashed or some shit. So
yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess back to the
So what'd you think of Vampire's Kiss?
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of like a pre-American Psycho.
Absolutely. And I mean, Christian Bale pretty much said that he took a lot of this character when he was like, it was basically a huge inspiration for American Psycho.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
this is like
the pre, obviously, by a lot.
Definitely.
It's funny because like it's called Vampire's Kiss, but it's almost like I wonder if like American Psycho is definitely like if there was no like what's it called, like there was no supernatural element to it, or like, you know, like vampire association, because it's very similar to the whole like 80s businessman, or like, you know, businessman that's super like focused on, you know, getting higher up the ladder, treating others like shit, and like being a playboy and sleeping with all kinds of different women each night, and like having issues with like, you know, being tied down and stuff, and just the whole, and
super self-centered people, you know, narcissistic, grooming themselves in the mirror, and like
they're like, yeah, definitely, and going so far as to be like psychiatry, you know, that kind of stuff, and needing like mental help and stuff like that, and definitely comes into play in this film. So I thought the soundtrack was pretty like great in the beginning for sure, like setting the mood up for like a scary film or whatever, a vampire film. Props to Colin Towns, I guess it says he did.
Oh yeah, it was definitely cool. Plus, there's lots. This is a good New York City movie. There's tons of cool shots of the city all throughout the movie, and it like captures the atmosphere very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That was my next note. Set in New York, great stuff. It's also like doesn't overstay its welcome with like the shots. Like I've seen a lot of films where like, you know, as cool as it is to see B-roll, sometimes it kind of like it's like
just the right amount.
This is padding. This is one of my notes here, and I think we had talked about this is over text, is like I thought he kind of sounded like a young Keanu Reeves for sure in this film.
Yeah, the accent is quite something, and it like he dials it up sometimes, and sometimes it's not quite there. But he said that was like a conscious decision. It's like when he's being like the biggest jerk is when the accent is like coming through the strongest.
Yeah, he definitely sounds like him. Nic Cage on a therapist couch, so we're already getting to this character like going to sessions and stuff like that. Which obviously there's nothing to be said about, or nothing to be said. There's nothing to be said. See you guys next week. There's nothing to be said bad about going to a therapist, but it's already showing you that this character needs help and stuff, and he's seeking help. But, random dude at bar drumming, acting a fool.
There you go.
I don't know what that was about. I do remember that scene, but I don't remember why that was so necessary to write down. I thought this was kind of weird because like they are not weird, but I thought it was funny. They hail like a taxi, but like they don't take it, and he's like "fuck off," and it was just like very New York and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's hooking up with Cassie Lemons from Hard Target.
Hard Target. Your mother took a chance. My mother took a chance on me. Mamma mia. We got a kid peeking down from above like a freak. He was like when Nic Cage is taking her back to his room. He's like looking like down from like the floor above or whatever, and I was just like, he's like making some Nic Cage worthy faces. So we got like our first kind of weird thing that happens like supernatural to a degree wise in this film. Not supernatural, but like it's weird. Nic Cage is making out with this woman and a bat flies in through the window. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? That's so weird. Like, you know, and like the way that he laughs when they leave is so ridiculous.
Yeah, that was hilarious. They told a funny story about that on the commentary because, like, the commentary was very cool to listen to.
Yeah,
Nic Cage seemed like a very cool person because he acknowledged, like, he kind of apologized to the director because he's like, I know I wasn't the easiest to work with on this movie because back then he was truly like method, and he said they had a huge argument where he wouldn't do it unless they got a real bat in there and like all this kind of, you know, real actory stuff.
Yeah, he was like having people help him to the bathroom.
Yeah, like taking it super seriously. But then it was pretty much like, thank you for letting me go this crazy. Like, I can't believe you let me do all this.
Yeah.
And the director was like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
And they were just cracking up the whole time.
Oh,
so.
for sure, yeah.
But I thought it was funny, like, the only way the director was able to, like, convince him to use a fake bat, he's like, if you get bit, you'll be dead within an hour. And he's like, oh, shit, okay.
Yeah. You'll be dead. Nice. I thought that part looked like, thankfully, like, that was fake because, like, there's a part when he catches it and he, like, smushes it. And I'm like, ugh, this is fucked. So, speaking of the bat, he says, a bat, holy shit. And I was like, Nick Cage is doing a Dr. Evil Keanu Reeves accent here. He's like, are you kidding me with this fucking bat?
He brought it back a little bit for Renfield, kind of.
So... And then Nick Cage gets turned on by a bat. I thought that was funny. He was like telling his therapist, he's like, that's when I got turned on, when I was fighting the bat. And I was like,
those were really funny.
So then like this woman shows up and she's like, she bites him when they're making love, and he's just like, no, and then like he's like, it's like someone that's being bit by a vampire.
And that's when he gets turned, or does he?
Yeah. Yeah, once we get through all this stuff, we'll definitely talk about kind of what's happening here. So we have a scene here where someone's shaving Nic Cage, and he's like, and I'm like, dude, I can't watch this because I know exactly what's about to happen. And yep, he fucking
never fails.
And I'm like, thank God it wasn't one of those things where they were like, and it was like, you know, like. You know, I don't know. Anyway. So I don't know. To me, I kind of felt like this is the first time when you kind of see, like, maybe something's not right here. Because he's making coffee, and there's, like, nobody there. He's, like, making it for somebody. He's like, I made it just how you like it. And it's like, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that kind of elevates this movie is it's kind of ambiguous as to what's happening.
Right.
I mean, they made it pretty clear, I think, what they thought, but it's still a little bit ambiguous, so it kind of makes you question things a little bit.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Which is always for the better in my mind.
Yeah.
Is it real?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely can be used for the better, like The Thing or this movie, but like there's also a ton of times I've seen movies that literally just had no ending, so they decided to do some bullshit.
It can be a cop-out, for sure.
Yeah. But so we talked about this, and I was cracking up where him and this other girl that he's kind of with, that isn't this lady that bit him, like, they're at, like, a museum, and they're looking at paintings, and she's like, well, which one, what do you like? And he's like, gotta take a piss. And he, like, left. I was just like, he turned into, like, the Tourette's guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Gotta take a piss.
I mean, this character is, like, the world's biggest jerk.
Yeah, he's a big ass. I mean, you can tell she really likes him, too, and he just kind of, like, treats her like shit. He tries to call her at one point to, like, apologize and stuff, and she's like, don't call me again, you fuck. And he's like, well, fuck you, too.
Yeah.
I also think, like, this is definitely, if it's time, the what's it called, vernacular, like the way that people were speaking. He says, I guess I was pretty horny, pretty keyed up. Nobody says keyed up anymore, so it was like, I think people stopped saying keyed up, like, when we were little. I mean, obviously, I never said, I was never like a baby, and I was like, I'm keyed up. It's like,
Bringing it back.
Yeah. I'm like, I saw a bat, and I got keyed up. So he chews out his secretary, and his boss says, oh, no biggie, like, take all the time you need, and he just lies and says he's pissed. I was like...
This is my favorite stuff in this movie, are the scenes between him and the secretary.
It's
like,
kind of hard to watch,
It is. It's actually, like, kind of scary at sometimes. Like, the thought of you calling in sick and your boss coming up to, like, check on you, like, it doesn't get much scarier than that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, obviously if it was somebody that was normally nice to you, it would be one thing.
Well, yeah.
But, like, this guy, I guess we should talk about this before we get any further into the review. Nic Cage has a secretary who's kind of, like, meek a little bit, but, like, she is treated absolutely horribly in this film by Nic Cage. Like, he treats her, like, essentially... Like, everything's going his way, like, as far as, like, at his workplace. Like, his boss doesn't yell at him. Like, he's really nice, and he's like, no pressure, you know, take all the time you need to find the files and stuff. But, like, Nic Cage is making up all this bullshit about how, like, if I don't get this, we're going to lose the account, and, like, my boss is going to fire me and stuff. And he's like, when the hell are you going to find the files, Alva? Like, he's yelling at her, and, like, at some point, she gets sick, and he shows up at her house, and he's like, apologize, truce. And then as soon as she gets in the car, he, like, starts ripping into her. He's like, it's an abusive relationship, like, so bad. It's, like, ridiculous.
It's crazy, over the top. The secretary is María Conchita Alonso from The Running Man.
Yeah.
She's really good in this. But, yeah, these scenes are my favorite part of this movie. Especially, I think the funniest part is, like, her job is to find the certain file that has been lost. And he basically ruins her life and almost kills her because of it. Yeah. But at one point, the dude who needs the file calls him, and he's like, hey, no big deal, like, take your time. It's not really... So, and in a different movie, it would be like, oh, this file is going to bankrupt the company. But, like, it doesn't even matter at all.
Yeah, he's, like, essentially making a huge deal out of nothing.
Just
and, like,
to terrorize her.
In the scene where, like, he calls up his boss calls or whatever. I think it's his boss calls him, I think. Or does he call his boss?
It's the client who's
but, like,
looking for the contract.
Is it calling him or is he
he gets called by the dude.
He's like, she's, you know, I'm going to get fucked because of this. And he's on the phone and he's trying to pretend like he's, like, being shooed out and stuff, but you can hear the conversation. It's, like, completely not how he's acting. And that's cracking he's up. Like, so. But, yeah, and any other thing, it would be like, he'd be like, oh, we're fine. But it was like, he's a... Yeah.
And then there's another pretty disturbing scene where, like, he's with a bunch of other dudes who work there, and they're, like, laughing about it.
Yeah,
Which is a true thing that happens.
We're kind of all over the place on this, but, like, there's a part where, like, like, his boss is essentially, they're like, no big deal. It's kind of like, it's pretty horrible. Mimes were beating the fuck out of each other. Did you see that? That was pretty funny.
Nice little touch.
So like,
and that's totally something you'd see in New York City for real.
Oh yeah, for sure. There was all kind. I mean, we went there. It was like, I was like, whoa. He almost left to see like, this is like the last time you kind of like see that he's trying to like be with this one, like his one
Cassie
lady.
Lemons.
Yeah. And he left to see her, and like the one lady shows up, the neck biter, grabs him and like whisks him away. And like he doesn't show up. They're like, we're talking about that where it's just like he chases after her chases her through the office and is like yelling at her and
literally
shit.
running at full speed.
And the boss and everybody like the next day they're all like laughing about it.
He chases her into the women's bathroom. I'm like,
oh yeah,
holy.
one of the things I didn't write down, but I kind of remember. I think I can remember what the boss says. He says like, he runs into the women's bathroom and he's just like, "Hey, no big deal, as long as you tell me, was my name and number up on the women's, thing?" And he's like, "Oh, you prick!" Or what? No, he says that to like one of his coworkers says something to him. He's like, "Fuck you," and I'm like. It's like they're talking about something that's like horrible, but like it's like the kind of banter like we have here on the podcast where we're just joking around.
There's a couple other cool touches where like he's just walking around messing with people, like he takes something from someone's desk and throws it in the trash, and like it's just so funny. He's such a jerk.
There's a truly fantastic Nic Cage freak out here when he gets the note to like stay out of her life. And he's just like, like he's like, because like, I feel like this is his therapy, is to like take his shit out on her.
Yep.
Yep. Shouldn't that copy in the file? Yep. I was just like, Abbott style or whatever.
Yep.
Nic Cage. He wears his sunglasses at night.
His future's so bright.
Yeah. He wears his sunglasses at night. Alba's too nice to him in this film.
Oh, yeah. Even after he does the rant, like, that goddamn files are gotta be in that. And he's like,
yeah,
like, are you okay?
He turns into a dog. I was like, huh?
Shut up, bitch.
A dog, or he's
yakking on the bone.
I don't know why I thought of that, but like when you started doing that, I was just thinking, it's horrible when anybody or animal gets sick. But whenever I see that, I don't know why.
A dog about to puke.
Yeah, it's just like the motion is kind of funny, but I know what's about to happen isn't. Anyway, so
what do you think when he jumped up on the desk? There you are. I'm like, dude, this is
he's
like
a fucking animal. He's an animal.
So let's talk about this. Like, this is one of the most over-the-top Nic Cage performances in any movie. And, like, this movie, when it came out, it was barely released. Like, no one saw it. It was only in theaters for one weekend.
Yeah.
And the critics, like, pretty much destroyed him. They were like, this is self-indulgent. It's over-the-top. This is horrible acting. What do you think about that?
Honestly, from what I've seen of other Nic Cage films, I mean, so in Pig, a lot more kind of keyed down and stuff.
Yeah,
but
I've seen most subtle movies.
I've seen definitely other films where he's. This is obviously like earlier in his career and stuff, but this to me is like the norm of what I'm looking for in a Nic Cage film. Not necessarily like out of control, but having the, I guess like having the balls to go that far.
Yeah,
and I think that like. I don't think it's too far. I think that it's because you got to take it into account. This is the character he's playing,
and the movie is about like a descent into madness.
Right. I mean, that's the character. The character. It's not like everybody else is like acting like Nic Cage too. He's the only one that's like a crazy piece of shit in this film, and like it's from his perspective. So you see like, I mean, it's not. I guess necessarily from his perspective, you see his life, but you see in contrast everyone acting normal. So I don't think it's out of control at all. I think he's a character that is out of control, but I don't think his acting is out of control.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will say there's some other movies where he does kind of the same thing where it is kind of bad.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fit in the movie. But in this case, like, it was totally...
I think that's maybe sometimes why, at least back in the day, he would get, like, he's a horrible actor. Kind of like, you know, people would say that and stuff because he would go out of control. But, like... Yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of any movies off the top of my head that I've seen him in that I was just like, man, this is fucking...
There's one that comes to mind called Zondali, which is horrible. And he's kind of like... I think that's his number one craziest movie. And it's, like, totally... I'm like, dude, this is not
his,
working.
like, Harrison
like, jump the
Ford,
shark.
Bill Murray moment where he's like, doesn't give a shit?
Yeah. But I think he's great in this movie, and if you're going to go big, like, go big.
I mean, if anything, I think that, like...
I admire
Nick
that he
Cage
did this.
always kind of just... He now he's at a point in his career when he can kind of pick and choose whatever the hell he wants to do, and he, you know, he does it for the love and not for the money and stuff. Not like, you know, not like I'm like, he's doing it because he likes doing them, you know, like, fuck money, like, he, you know what I mean? It's a project that he's passionate about and stuff, and
Yeah,
I think I'm just happy for him that he's in that state where he can kind of do whatever the hell he wants.
definitely.
There's definitely films that I want to nominate for this podcast that I haven't seen with him in it. They might not be good, but, you know, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't think it's bad acting. I think it's great.
I think that there's very few times when I've seen, like, somebody that, like, is a bad actor that was put into a role, and a lot of times that comes down to, like, the person just either wasn't an actor to begin with, and it was like one of those straight to video kind of things, so you can't, it's like somebody's mother or something, so you can't expect them to, like, be able to act. Or it's like a combination of, like, someone not understanding this person wasn't right for the role, and, like, they didn't stop the movie or, like, replace them or, like, give them better direction. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So there's also perfectly great actors that are just given, like, they're in movies that just have bad scripts and they make the best with what they can. I think Nic Cage is definitely does that, and I think so does, like, a bunch of other actors. I mean, there's a ton of people, like, you know, normally you'd be like, what kind of fucking shit am I watching here? But, like, somebody like him or Gary Oldman or, like, there's a ton of people. It's like they always bring their A game, even if they're, like, in a movie. You're like, what is going on here? But yeah, I disagree with that completely. Who said that shit? Like, bring him to me. I'm like, I want you to find the file. Who the hell said that? Yeah. Yeah, there's a rant here. Essentially, I'm going to paraphrase where he talks about, you know, she's like, maybe if I could have some help, and he's like, you're the lowest on the totem pole, and even if there was somebody else here that was lower than you, I wouldn't make them eat your eat shit to help you out.
You have to do it, or I'll fire you.
Yeah, like that kind of shit. It's like,
that was pretty great.
Nic Cage gets a rise from treating Alva like shit. Yeah, so I do.
And
have
ultimately, it ends in an assault scene, basically.
Yeah. I'm glad that they didn't go any further than they did, like, as far as, you know, but she essentially...
He took it all the way.
She faints or whatever, and it's like, they don't really... It's not like they're not showing...
But that's when he puts a gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger and he can't kill himself and he starts crying. I'm like, dude, this is extreme. Like,
yeah, he was on a skateboard. Nic Cage gets a rise... Oh, wait, I already said that. I'm an idiot. He goes to Alva's house. This is what we were talking about earlier. I just have a thing that says, that's just messed up, and looks in the window. He's like, and she's like, not wearing, like, she's wearing just like a bra and ironing her stuff because she called off sick when she wasn't really sick.
Yeah, I think probably most people have had this experience where they just don't want to go in. You call off sick.
Yeah.
And the thought of your boss showing up to check on you is like the scariest thing.
Well, also, it's one of those things too where it's like, I don't know anybody. Well, I've never been in this position, at least, where I've called off, not because I was sick. You know, like, I've called off because not because I was sick. I've called off and been like, oh, I just need, like, a day to myself and stuff. But, like, I've never called off, and the reason was because my boss, I felt like he was going to kill me. So it's like...
Yeah.
Also, like, her parents are just like, you need to get off your ass and go to work and stuff. And I'm like, man, if I fucking... I guess I've never been in that position where if I told somebody something and, like, you know, because she doesn't seem like the kind of person that would lie. So it's like the only person that ever does anything in this film is her brother that seems to give a shit about her. But, like, yeah, I think one of the things, at least when I was younger, is, like, when I would stay off from school, I was scared that, like, one of my teachers would see me, and, like, if I went out to, like, dinner with my parents, or if we went to, like, a store or something, that, like, I guess I thought that my teacher would see me and be like, yo, hey, like, you're fucked. And I'm like, no. You know what's funny? I did have a time in, like middle school or elementary school when I was in, like, I think MYO, and, like, I didn't go to school that day, but I did go to practice, and one of my teammates told our teacher.
What a jerk.
And she was like, fuck off. She essentially told him to, like, stop being like a brown noser.
Be a narc.
Yeah. But it was just like, she's
That's
like,
lame.
you know, Mike never, you know, does anything, so eat shit.
Snitches get stitches.
Yeah. But anyway, and as soon as she says it, like, I was, I have to, tell you something. I wasn't actually sick. He's like, you're going to get your ass back to work, and you're going to look for the fucking files. Now, motherfucker. Like,
Today's the day.
Yeah.
You're going to find that file.
Yeah, it's
She's like, oh.
She's like, oh. So then they stop, and she, like, goes to talk to her brother, and she's just like, I want bullets for this fucking gun. And, like, they only have blanks. And that's kind of when you kind of find out, later on in the film, when he, like, goes to blow his head off, there were just blanks in there, but he didn't know that, so he thought that they were, like, real bullets, and he thinks now that he's immortal, essentially like a vampire.
That's one of my favorite parts, because then he does a weird cry, or he said he challenged himself to find a way to say boo-hoo.
He's essentially, like, he's, like, been ravaged in desperation, so he can't even, like, really cry.
And when he's running, going, I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! That's probably the funniest scene to me in this whole movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff in this film, but, like, one of the weirdest things is when you see his, like, I don't know, as you continue to see his descent, where it's, like, earlier in the film when, like, he talks to somebody and they aren't there with the coffee, and then here where he's, like, he can't see himself in the mirror, but, like, the audience can clearly see him, so it's not like he is a vampire. Like, you can see that he's, so something is going on in his mind.
Yeah, I noticed that he literally chews the scenery in this movie, because at one point he's biting his pillow. I was like, I'm like, nice.
There's a part where she actually finally finds the file, and he's like, too late. So, like, it doesn't matter. It was like, he's like the epitome of, like, a goalpost mover in this film. He tries, like, biting Alva, and, like, nothing happens. This is when he assaults her, and she's like, essentially she faints or whatever, and he, like, does some unscrupulous things, thankfully, that were not caught on camera. And he goes to shoot himself, like you said, with a gun. And this is when he, like, goes for the Oscar.
Yeah. Like you were saying, pretty much from here on out, this movie is just, like, one of the most insane performances.
From here on out, this was probably the best part of the film for me. Because this is the funniest part of the film for me, is he goes to this store to buy fucking teeth. They're too expensive, so he buys, like, fucking plastic teeth. So he's, like, going around, like, like, looking for something to, bite and stuff, and, like, she's like, you know what you have to do? You have to suck blood and stuff. Like, and, he's doing all kinds of, like, crazy stuff. Like, he, like, catches a pigeon, and he fucking, like, eats it, and it's, like, fucked up.
He also,
he's like,
he gets a piece of wood and, like, makes it into a steak, and he runs up to people. He's like, "I'm a vampire, kill me!"
Yeah, he's like,
and like all the scenes with him on the street, those were not actors. Those were normal people who were like just reacting to a crazy freak out, which happens all the time in New York City.
Yeah.
So
surprised they even had anybody react at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they were just like, whatever.
But he's all at one point he's just like wailing, like
yeah,
ah,
yeah, because he's on something or something's going on. He's having like a breakdown at some point because, he's also like, this is another one of my funniest moments in this film is he sleeps on the floor and he puts like his couch on top of him like a coffin.
Yeah,
and when he wakes up in the morning, he's like, like. Just walking around and shit. It's like, what? That was another funny part in this film.
the tortures of the damned.
He beats his way into a club. This is another fucking funny part here. This is like when he's stalking around the club as a vampire. And he's like, and it's like nobody even looks at him twice. It's like.
Yeah.
This is when it kind of starts to become like this is the horror element for sure, besides of course the assault on Alva and other things like that. Is he goes up to a woman in the VIP and he tries to like bite her and she like slaps him and then he like actually kills her with plastic vampire teeth, like they like pierce like her jugular, which yeah, I guess that's possible. His lady, so like. This is another thing that comes up. He's in that club and he sees the lady and he's just
Jennifer
like...
Beals.
Yeah, she's like...
Lady!
Yeah. He's like, hello, nurse. Turns into like Animaniacs. She essentially like acts like she's never met him before. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, who the hell are you? And like there's another guy that's like, you know...
Stay away from him.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's, you know, she's with you, man. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And, like, essentially they have to, like, take him screaming and kicking away from the club. And it's like, okay, so what's going on here? Like, this is when it's really, like, breaking down. And it's like, and he's, like, talking to a wall. And then it cuts the psychiatrist. And he's, like, hallucinating. It keeps cutting back and forth, and that's when you kind of learn like, okay, so he's probably not actually ever seen a psychiatrist, and he's literally just
having a breakdown.
Yeah,
breaking with reality.
Yeah.
That scene kind of reminded me of a Gollum, just because he's like doing two different characters kind of simultaneously.
Oh, for sure. Like one is like his
well put together,
his
like
suit and everything. He looks completely fine, and he's talking to his psychiatrist and stuff like that, and. I couldn't find the dialogue anywhere, but I wrote it down here. He's talking to a psychiatrist, and he says, the fact is, I did murder someone last night. I turned into a vampire. It's a long story. And because, his psychiatrist, like, introduces him to her, like, next client, which he's like, I think you guys would be in love or whatever.
Woman,
yeah.
Basically. That scene is great.
And Sharon says, goodness. And the therapist says, Peter. People get murdered every day in this city. Do you think the world is going to stop? Yeah, I guess, but the police and everything. What if they find me? Just get on with your life. I'll take care of the cops. It's like, I was like, and you can tell this was like, obviously.
A true fantasy.
Yes, it's like, it made no fucking sense. And he's just talking to like himself, like, yeah. And then when he gets home, he's like, he's like yelling at like his new girlfriend, like Sharon, like,
yeah, he tears his whole apartment apart.
Yeah, he's like, you know, you're always bitching at me and stuff, and it's like,
leave me alone.
Yeah. He like uses his steak as a penis and is like doing all kinds of shit, and I'm like,
so now he's like taking it up to 11.
Yeah,
like, you can't be bigger than that.
So. So meanwhile, like the brother and the sister end up like going after him, and like the brother goes in and essentially finds him in there, and is like, he has a tire iron with him, but like he goes in and sees Nic Cage, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" or whatever. Essentially looking at him like, "What the?" Because he's
literally holding.
Because right before he comes in, he's like, and like crawls under his couch. And that's when he's like, where the fuck is he? And then he like sees him under the couch and he's like, ah! And he grabs the steak and like holds it up to himself like Nic Cage does, and he's like, ugh, and then like that's when he like pushes down on it and like essentially kills,
which
like,
is a horrifying death because he's like,
yeah, and yeah, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And that's essentially like it plays like the same kind of music it did in the beginning. And that was like the end of the film, but I was just like,
like
holy shit.
Yeah, that went crazy dark there at the end.
So I guess we should talk about like, you know, what to you do you think was going on and stuff? Because like you said, it's like the thing where it's not super clear as to...
I think it's just a descent into madness. Like it's all in his mind, all the vampire stuff.
Yeah.
It's...
Do you think he was ever seeing a psychiatrist or no?
I don't know. I didn't actually think about that. But probably no, because you know, kind of like you mentioned, the fact that he was talking to a wall, and thought it was his therapist. So I think it's all in his mind. They kind of, in the commentary, they talked about that. Like even when he's getting bit, it's supposed to be like a sex scene, but he still has all his clothes on and stuff.
Yeah.
So like they did put in little hints. I think that it was all in his mind, but I think you could also interpret it as it was real.
Yeah.
Like that vampire actually bit him and turned him into a vampire.
Right. Because like, yeah, there's a part where like he's
and even the very end of
her.
oh sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the very end of the movie is her face.
Yeah.
Like saying something, and it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If that's the case, why did they end that way? You know? So it's,
I think it was all fake in his mind. Like I don't think it had anything to do with it. And actually, I think like there was something wrong with his character as far as like either he was doing drugs or like he was just mentally unstable and he's barely holding it together, and like something happened where he maybe had a breakdown like you said, or like maybe he stopped taking medicine or something that we didn't see, you know, before the film, where he just starts to like descend even further and stuff. And essentially the only thing I think keeping him in line was like his therapy of essentially treating Alva like shit. And he dreamt this whole thing up and created this whole thing with the vampires, because essentially he at the end of throughout the movie he doesn't get fangs, he like buys the plastic ones and he like puts like himself in a coffin, but it's just like his couch over top of him at night and stuff. So
and he uses his fantasy of the psychiatrist to justify like his horrible crimes.
Right. But yeah, I definitely think it's like totally interesting as far as like you thinking it's going to just be a straight up like horror film, and at the end of the day it is, but it's also like it might not even involve anything to do with like supernatural stuff. But there's also, like you said at the end, it could be, you never know. So this is a total 9.95 for me. It's one of my favorite movies ever, and I think like you said, the ending of this movie, like the last 30 minutes has to be seen to be believed. Like it is totally insane and awesome. Yeah, and it's funny. Definitely by far the best part for me, at least, was the last 30 minutes of the film, where he's like off the rails talking to himself and wearing the fake teeth. I was just like, this should have been the whole film. This is so absurd. Yeah, man. I'll probably give it like a 8.95.
Nice.
It was really good.
So is it time to move on to 2023's Renfield?
To the best film we've ever watched. So let's talk about Renfield. Yeah, this literally just came out. Well, not literally, because literally would mean it just came out like 5 seconds ago. But I don't know the exact month this came out, but this came out this year. And it's an American action comedy horror film. And of course, starring Nicolas Cage as Dracula. It's the characters are inspired by Bram Stoker's characters, Dracula, Renfield. And of course, we've got Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina, Ben Schwartz, Brandon Scott Jones. I'll come back to that one. Adrian Martinez.
Tim Allen.
Nicolas Cage, of course, and I'll try this one. Try this again. Shohreh Agdashlu. Agdashlu? I think so. Trying not to mispronounce anybody's names here. I'm like Nic Cage. So Renfield, Dracula's henchman and inmate at the lunatic asylum for decades, longs for a life away from the Count, his various demands, and all the bloodshed that comes with them. Whoa! And he gets powers from being his henchman. I like how they essentially, like, the beginning of this film. I guess before we get into that, like, how did you see this, like, a trailer too, like I did? I guess.
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I'm very aware of a new Nic Cage movie coming out, and I was very curious. Like, even though I've seen most of his movies, I couldn't really picture what his take on Dracula would be. So I was.
I knew
interested.
exactly what it would be.
You did?
Yeah.
So
I guess you could never know with anybody, but
yeah, I was very curious about it, and I saw it as soon as it came out, and I didn't have super high expectations for it, and I was pleasantly surprised.
he didn't play it up as much as the last one. But
It'd be hard to do for anyone.
yeah. Yeah. And I just
How
saw
about you?
I just saw a trailer and I was like, oh, cool. I know that he's always wanted to do actual like Dracula, and stuff. I know that, besides Superman, that's like one of his things. I think that he's talked about before, and I think that's one thing that I kind of always was sad to hear is like he's such a big comic book fan and he's such a DC fan that he just never got to truly play Superman like he wanted and stuff. But it was nice to see that he got to play Dracula and stuff. But yeah, so that's
What did you think about his
about
take of Dracula?
I guess I wish he was in it more.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I thought that he was like intimidating and stuff, and he was great in this film.
I knew that he would be funny in
Yeah.
the role, but I didn't know that he would be as actually scary as he is in some scenes. Like, he's genuinely
Nicolas
like
Cage is
menacing.
always scary. Like, usually, like he can be that scary. Like
Yeah.
in that last
I think
movie,
it works.
he's a scary fuckwit, man.
Yeah.
So I didn't think he wouldn't be scary. I think it would depend on how they made his like makeup and stuff, and they do a job of being like he has like really sharp teeth, not just fangs in this. Like all of his teeth are like he's like got
Like a
baraka
shark.
mouth or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But I liked how in the beginning of this film it's like black and white, and they like recreate like essentially like
That was
Bela
awesome.
Lugosi
That was
Dracula
awesome.
scenes with Nic Cage, and it looks really really
Brilliant.
good.
Yep, that was great. Love that.
I also liked a lot of the effects in this were pretty great.
Yeah, I was not expecting the level of gore in
Yeah.
this movie, and there was a ton of CGI, but there was a ton of real stuff too.
Yeah. Well, the CGI was really good.
It was some of the better CGI, but like at the beginning when that priest explodes,
Yeah,
I was like, dude, okay,
yeah,
this is gonna be
yeah.
great.
I was like, this is
It's like a
gross.
full dummy exploding, and his head like spirals off, and I was like, whoa, this is like some Peter Jackson stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty.
It was awesome.
Pretty gross, but it was hilarious. Because he goes into the priest's mouth, and like as like smoke or fog, and like explodes him from the inside. It's like it reminded me of Rise of the Triad. It was like
Yeah, ludicrous.
holy
good.
shit.
That was great.
So like, yeah, they have like a cool setup here at the beginning where they show all the like last people of their kind that are like vampire hunters, and like Renfield, essentially like Dracula is fucked. Like he got himself into a thing, and he's in like a sacred circle, and he can't get out, and he's pretty much gonna die. And then Renfield gets called to save him, and he like breaks the circle, and that's when like Dracula just like destroys everybody. It's like Dracula. I like when they show like Dracula as like essentially unstoppable, because it's kind of like Vampire Hunter D, like those kind of vampires where they're essentially like to a human there's like really nothing that can be done because they're so
Yep.
supernatural and like unstoppable. So
What did you think of Nicholas Hoult as Renfield?
I thought he was great.
Yeah.
I thought he did a good job of like holding up the film and stuff as his character.
Totally.
I don't know if he's like English, but I think like the accent he did
He is.
felt like of the time and stuff of when he would have became Renfield. So it was really cool. Like he sounded of like, even for English, he sounded like of an older generation.
Yeah.
So it was like, I was like, props.
I think if he wasn't as good in this, like, this movie would have totally fallen apart.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So, great job. I thought
Yeah,
he was really good, too.
props to those two.
He was very good and very funny.
So, like, the whole thing with this film is, like, Renfield's job is to bring victims to Dracula, because after that last battle, he's, like, completely fucked. He's, like, essentially gets turned into, like, a crispy critter, and he's, like, he has to essentially nurse him back to health, but, like...
That initial makeup when you first see him was awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That was, like, you know...
When he's not, like, crispy anymore, but he's, like, kind of, like...
It's, like, melted.
He looked like the guys in Star Trek Voyager who had, like, the... What's it called? Like, the skin...
The phage.
The phage, yeah.
I'm embarrassed that I knew that off the top
Well,
of my
I
head.
was going to say skin aphasia, but I was like, that's not right.
I thought he looked kind of like the dude in RoboCop who gets melted by, like, the nuclear waste.
Like, instantly?
Yeah.
He's like, help me.
But we always, like, complain about there's not many practical effects anymore, but they were great in this movie, and there were tons of them.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I'm always more for practical folks. I'm practical folks. And I'm not necessarily against, like, completely CG. I just want to, you know, I think that, like, because you look at a ton of movies we've seen back in the past, like Jurassic Park and stuff, and it's like, you know, like, this film did a great job with the effects.
Yeah.
But, like, in this film, like, he doesn't want to, like, I guess, bring people to Dracula that were good people.
Right.
Like, Renfield is, like...
Criminals and gangsters.
Yeah. He seems like he's in this, you know, relationship for, like, himself, but also, like, he wants to try to, like, not do anything too bad, but it's, like, you know, it's kind of, he's on the line and stuff about, like, what...
That's kind of what the whole heart of this movie
Yeah.
is, the relationship. Like, he's a nice guy trapped in, like, a toxic relationship with Dracula.
because he's going to, like, meetings all the time, and, like, he's bringing, like, the abusers from the AA meetings to Dracula, and it's, like, barely doing anything for Dracula, because Dracula needs, like, you know, he needs, like, people, like, that are, like, pure or nice, or, like, you know, I think he was talking about, you know, he wants happy couples, unsuspecting tourists, a handful of nuns, a busload of cheerleaders. He said, a busload of cheerleaders? A busload of cheerleaders will get me back to full power. Do you mean female cheerleaders? Don't make it a sexual thing. No, I did not say it was. You know, it's not the gender I'm concerned with. I eat boys, I eat girls. It's the purity. I also liked how they really didn't... Like, Dracula in this is, like, not really sexual. He can turn on charms and stuff, but he's, like... He's just, like, about world domination at this point.
Definitely more monstrous
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah, because at one point he's just, like... Essentially, in the world, there's me, and then there's, like, everybody else that are, like, either followers or, like, my food. So, it was, like, okay. I liked... The action scenes in this were pretty out of control with some of the stuff they were doing. It wasn't like... I think there was some stuff they did that was really awesome, but some of the stuff wasn't, like, super revolutionary. But it was also, like, cool with, like, seeing Renfield, like, use his powers and kind of, like, do some ridiculous stuff that, like, I didn't really expect to happen.
Yeah, I didn't love all the action, and I found out, like, it was choreographed by someone who does all the Marvel fights, and I was like, I can tell this is very Marvel-y, but I did appreciate the level of violence in it, and there was some cool stuff.
I think that's why it was good, because of the violence and stuff.
But I was like, does every movie have to have, like, kung fu in it these days? Like,
yeah.
But it was cool.
Yeah. I think it was better.
You could have done away with maybe 20% of the fights in this movie.
That's how I feel whenever we watch an action film. I'm like...
But I will say the end when he's ripping people apart and, like, rips a guy's face off and stuff. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's the scene in the motel specifically
so
outside where they're, like, fighting and, like,
there's literal fountains of blood.
A guy shoots down and then it's just, like, blood sprays up and, like, he grabs what's her name, Rebecca Aquafina, and, like, they walk from the second story down off of, like, a bunch of bodies in that, like, outdoor motel or hotel or whatever it's called. That's the one that stuck out of my mind as, like, the big takeaway.
He just rips the guy's face off for no reason. Like,
I think, like, if anything, I have to give this movie more props for action than a lot of stuff I've seen because of the gore.
Mhm.
Like, if there was no gore in this and they were just, like, fighting, it would have been like, eh. But,
I agree.
I think it was kind of like watching an action scene in any film, but if it was, like, super gory, because there would just be parts where, like in the first action scene when Renfield's, like, protecting these people in this, like, restaurant or bar, he, like, throws, like, a platter and it cuts some dude's head off.
A dude gets his head punched off.
Yeah,
too, which was
you don't, like, expect it. You're like, what the fuck? But, like, every time it happened, it was so, like, shocking at least. Not I wasn't like,
yeah,
oh, but it was kind of shocking because some of the other parts of the fight were just like the guy would get knocked out, and then the next thing would be like the dude's arms would get ripped off, and he'd be like, fucked, and you'd be like, what?
When he's beating the dude with his own arms, I was
Yeah.
like, dude, Peter Jackson would be proud of this. Like,
Yeah,
this is great.
It was awesome. Also, I guess the very first thing that happened so action-wise is when he knocks out those guys, and then the killer shows up, and he just punches the killer's head through a window.
That was great.
And I guess, who was it? Ben Schwartz?
Yeah.
Was like flipping out.
So I'm just now seeing his name in the movie is Tedward Lobo, which is fucking, that's hilarious. Dude.
Yeah, I knew. I kept calling. I don't know if I probably have some notes about him, but I was like, his character was so, what the fuck? Yeah, his name, Tedward Lobo.
Not all the humor worked for this for me, but a lot of it did. So it was hit or miss, but probably more hit than miss, I'd say.
I think that, like, the biggest failures the only real failures for me for comedy were Awkwafina and Ben Schwartz. Like a bunch of their stuff was fine, but then there would be like stuff that was kind of unneeded with like there's a lot of yelling by Awkwafina, like, this is bullshit, fuck this, and blah, blah, blah. And then by Ben Schwartz, it was just kind of like, there was some stuff that was like unneeded that I was kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I agree. And my biggest criticism is there's a subplot with Awkwafina and her brother.
Yeah.
Like their grief, and it was like way off tone with the rest of the movie. I'm like, dude, get rid of this.
It felt like there were
horrible.
like two different movies.
Yeah, it's like, delete those scenes, man. This sucks.
Yeah.
Way out of step with the rest of the movie.
Yeah. I didn't think it was like obviously the worst thing I'd ever seen, but if it was like in any other film, it probably would have been fine if this was like a cop drama, but it was like, this is a movie
now we have to hear about their grief. And I'm like, what?
This is a movie about Renfield, not it. But a lot of films do that where they have subplots, so it's not like, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but it was just kind of like,
yeah.
I think it also was just written poorly. Like, they could have done it a lot better as far as like, I think if they wanted to do that, they should have made like Awkwafina and like Renfield have a romantic relationship like 1/4 of the way through the film and start to become like partners and that would create more tension, because that only really happens almost like at the very end of the film. But like, you know, at the beginning, it's like, why do you care about this random policewoman that's chasing after this random dude named Ted Lobo? You know what I mean? It's like the only.
I'm not criticizing her. Like, I like.
No,
her in
yeah,
the movie.
I really like her in general, and same thing with like Ben Schwartz. It's just like, it was just like if Nicolas Cage and what's his face were in this film as like Dracula and Renfield, like this film would be like not really. I wouldn't really recommend this to anybody.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd watch it and be like, this is one of these films that was just somebody thought it was funny, but like I think they were wrong. Yeah. But this was a part that kind of made me laugh a little bit was Tedward Lobo. Ben Schwartz was running away from the cops throwing drugs and saying, "What did I do?" I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of stuff that landed in this, but like you said, it was just kind of... there was a lot of stuff in this was, like I said, it was shocking. There's just, it kind of comes out of nowhere where, like, Dracula's here and all the excuses of why Renfield didn't bring him, like, what he wanted, and he just, like, cuts his stomach. And you find out, like, Dracula's blood can heal people, which I thought was interesting, because I think that's, like, the first time I've ever seen that in, like, a movie, or, you know... Maybe it's been done in a book before, but I've never heard of it. But I just thought that was interesting. This is when I put 17 minutes in. This became a cop drama. I could do without it. And the side plot with Ted Lobo.
Yep.
It does come back into the fold of, like, why, but at the same time, like, you didn't really need it to, like, come back in. Like, it could have just been, you know, Dracula gets with Ben Schwartz, and that's how he becomes, like, you know, in the mafia, but...
Did you know that they filmed a musical number for this movie and then cut it out?
What?
Yeah. It was Nicholas Hoult, like, dancing through the city, and he had this whole big music number, and they cut it out. It's on the DVD, like a deleted scene.
What?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Dude, why the fuck would you cut that out?
Yeah, I mean, in a crazy, you know, silly movie like this.
When was it supposed to take place? Like, at the end? Or?
I forget exactly. No, it's not at the end. It's like when he's super happy and, like...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like second act kind of thing where he, like, starts to finally...
He gets finally got away from Dracula, and he's, like, you know, dancing through the city.
Yeah, it's like the second act before, like, the whole... Yeah. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. I mean, this movie does have a bunch of different tones, so, like, I could see that working. I wonder if they cut it for time, or...
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I just think that's funny when they would film an entire musical sequence.
Yeah, I mean, they put a work into it. And
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, it was cool.
This was a line that was from a random, like, cop that was, I think, Aquafina's partner or something. Can you order me the number 3? The toilet just ordered the number 2. I went, what? Cutting off the dude's arms with a serving plate. I like the idea, like, I wrote this down, like, I like the idea of Renfield or even, like, Dracula being a hero. I don't know if they've done that before, but I thought that's kind of a cool idea of, like, somebody that's, like, previously known as, like... Well, like I said, yeah, I like the idea. I don't think that anybody's ever done that before, like, having a hero. I would like to see that going further, but... So Dracula wants to be, like, a god and dominate the world, essentially, at this point, because Renfield puts it into his mind, like, we should, you know... We shouldn't be just hiding and stuff. And he's like, you know what, Renfield, you're right. Like... I should be ruling the world. And he's like, that's not what I meant. Like, he essentially was like, you know. They talk about how, like, what is it, like, Renfield was, like, going to, what do you think about those, like, support group and stuff in this, where he, like, keeps going to a support group and stuff?
I thought it was interesting, but I mean, the scene when Dracula shows up and annihilates him, it was like, dude, this is actually, like, kind of scary. Like, it was horrifying.
What the most horrifying thing was, like, when, like, he shows up and he's, like, outside, and, like, he's like, oh, who is that? Come on in. And he's like, no, and it's, like, too late because he's already invited him in.
Yeah. And he also, that's one of his coolest looks because he has that cool top hat on, and, like, the cape and everything. I was like, dude.
Yeah. So, he looks more like Jekyll and Hyde in this.
Yeah.
He's also, like, doing the, like, freaking Hot Topic special with, like, a ring on every finger.
Yeah.
It's like, how annoying can that be, I wonder?
Those were all his own rings, by the way. I guess he's super into rings in real life. Wanted to bring his ring.
I tried to put a ring on every finger once, and it was, like, the most annoying, like, minute of my life. It's like, maybe if I had long ones like that, I don't know. Yeah, he's just got, like, a bunch of random rings on. Ring game. So, Dracula, like you said earlier about how, like, he's a big, essentially, like, this is kind of, like, very, like the last film where it's about, like, mental stuff. This is, like, a toxic relationship, and, like, Dracula is, like, a huge gaslighter. So, like,
totally
he's essentially playing the same character again.
Yeah.
And he says to Renfield, I'm the real victim here. He's like, you know, screwed me over after all these years. I thought you loved me. And, like, yeah, like we were talking about, where he, like, kills the shit out of everybody. It was like,
it was like a literal bloodbath. I was like, whoa.
It was also, like, I thought it was cool because it was, like, he pushes Renfield away because Renfield tries to, like, he's like, no, and he like pushes him away, and he's like flying away, and as he's flying away in slow-mo, he's like killing everybody, so it's like, it just goes to like kind of demonstrate how quick Dracula actually is, if like in slow-mo, he's killing all these people. Also, when he first comes in and before he kills anybody and he's talking about who he is, I like that they played like, I don't know if you noticed that, like Swan Lake.
Oh, no, I didn't notice that. That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
From the original Dracula.
Yeah, that's when I was like, dude, holy shit.
That was a cool touch. But I think my favorite scene in the whole movie is when Renfield moves into his own apartment and Dracula shows up and they kind of have that conversation. I was like, this is great stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good writing and great acting.
Yeah, essentially like gaslights him and stuff, and it's just like, you fucked me over. You know, I thought that you were going to be the one to like, you know, help me out and stuff, and you fucked me over and all this, and it's like, Jesus. What was it? They called in like, or like when he gets arrested for like, Renfield gets arrested for the killing of these people when like it was Dracula and stuff, but obviously what are you going to say? Oh, it was Dracula, this guy that's not here right now. But like, essentially this is when you find out like the mob is on the police force is on the mob's payroll. Like essentially everybody is a dirty cop except for Aquafina on the police. This is another part that I thought was kind of funny. Nic Cage earlier in the film had like, I guess Ben Schwartz had gone to see where like Renfield lived, and like he went to where Dracula, like where he used to live with Dracula, and he shows up to like the abandoned place, and like all of his other dudes get killed, and Nic Cage is like laughing like a crazy person, and Ben Schwartz is like, "Are you happy? Or you're gonna fuck me up?" And I thought that was funny. It was like, they ask him, "You wash your master's cape?" And he says, "No, it's dry clean only." I was just like, this is the cool action scene we were talking about, where he like kicks a dude, and it like when he kicks him, it detaches his body from his fucking arms, and then he starts beating the shit out of people with arms, and then he kills two dudes with the dude's arms he ripped off by spearing them. And I think this is the part you were talking about where he just rips a dude's face. Or he's wearing, like, they're all wearing these, like, masks, like ski masks or something. And he's just like that. And the guy's like, oh!
I wanted to be like, stand up and take a
bath. I was cracking up.
That was hilarious.
And then he jumps off the third floor onto a guy. And the guy is just like, a fountain of blood shoots up. I was like, oh my god, dude. This is freaking awesome.
Yep. Hilarious.
And then Dracula turns on his charms and is intoxicated by the mob boss mother. So this is something I guess we didn't talk about, but we had talked about, I guess, earlier with alluding to Renfield. But, like, that's how Renfield gets his powers.
By eating bugs.
Yeah.
That was really...
He has to eat, like, bugs, and then that's when he, like, is able to, like, get some of Dracula's power and stuff. And,
he has to power up so he gets that ant farm and like,
yeah,
eats the ant farm.
Let's see. Yeah, so like there's a part where he's just like they're about to like shoot each other with guns and stuff, and he's just like, "You think I need guns to fuck you up?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm out, crap." And then she pulls out a gun and shoots like Ben Schwartz, and he was like, "Oh shit." Yeah, I just thought that like overall the movie was pretty funny.
It was for sure. I was laughing a lot.
There was a part where like Renfield, like this is kind of the end, where he like kicks Ben Schwartz's character so hard that it goes like X-ray Mortal Kombat mode, and every bone in like his body shatters, and he like shits himself. I was like, Jesus. And essentially, like they put like when they go to fight Dracula, they put like a circle around him or whatever, and they just like beat the shit out of him.
That might have been the funniest part of this whole movie for me, because like,
they're playing like this happy music while they're like beating him up,
but they keep using more over the top weapons.
Yeah.
Like they get a saw out at one point, and then at one point she just like shoots him.
Yeah.
That was great.
And before
So funny.
they're like, before like we do this, do you have anything to say? And he's like, I wish to spend a season in hell with all the cool people. Hail Satan! And I was like, okay.
That's definitely a new one, like Dracula being under the powers of Satan. Like,
Yeah.
that was great. And
Also,
totally
like,
out of nowhere.
He like, at the end they do a thing where like they bring all the people back with Dracula's blood or whatever. I was like, okay. So, yeah. And then they play I'm Free to Do What I Want Any Old Time in the credits, and I was like, okay. I was cracking up.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna go 7.95, my standard on this.
Yeah.
This is a good movie. Fun watch.
Yeah. I think it's the same for me, 7.95.
Nice.
It was really good.
Highly entertaining. Also, it was very cool looking. Like, it was very colorful.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It was nice to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked it.
Cool. Well,
What are we
what's
doing?
next?
What's next? Well, I think next week, I hear a Lucio Fulci.
Whoa!
It's going to be Italian Horror Week with Suspiria and The Beyond.
Nice.
Can you believe it? You're like, I can because we picked them.
I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Every time someone hits a basket, whoa, whoa, whoa.
That sounds frightening.
It is. Or will be. So.
It's going to be a bash.
I
Or
know.
maybe a mash.
I heard a mash. Or even a bash. So,
All right.
remember, don't go out at night. Watch your back, everybody, because there's vampires out, but next week there's going to be Italian horrors out.
Suspiria's.
Yes, Suspiria's. The Beyond.
All right. Until next time. Bye.
Peace.
Well, another episode in the books.
Yes.
That was fun. You want to see if there's something on? Maybe watch another movie or something?
Yeah, let's do it. I love
Alright.
movies.
Cool. You too.
That. Welcome to Mooseport.
Mayor, no mayor, you're still gonna get the same great service.
The tortures of the damned.
Bye.
Capes are natural. Capes are fun. Capes are best when they're one-on-one.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, if it was like Jack the Ripper times or whatever, when everybody had to wear a cape. I should have to wear a cape.
Holy shit.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Should we?
Whoa.
Well, that's going in.
Like boiling hot water splashed all over the place. And you call yourself a podcaster. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm like, what's that other
Very
film
true.
on the fucking double feature?
High Spirits.
Never heard of
It's
it.
like a haunted house comedy. It was pretty bad.
It's funny that it's a double feature.
I know.
Didn't even get its own release, I guess.
Starring Steve Guttenberg. Like, dun, 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 dun.
Yes, misfiled. Somebody puts the film in the wrong place and it's misfiled. Let's see. It makes it much harder. No shit. As opposed to something that's filed
That's why it's so
correctly.
fun.
It's like, what? It's like real dialogue from the movie, folks. Yes. Why am I looking like, yes.
Alright, another episode in the books.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Let's
you want
do that again. All I said was, yes, let's agree.
Oh, I thought you said
What dialogue?
that was funny.
Yes, I agree. Or let's... Okay.
That was good. I was trying not to laugh.